I'm going to talk a little bit about PTs and BTs, primary trainers and basic trainers for World War II. I'm going to stick with things I know the best about the Fairchild and the Vultee. I'll talk a little bit about the Stearman and the Ryan and Kent. And Kent, you guys keep me straight on the Stearman, and I try not to denigrate it too much. So anyway, so if you're not familiar, Stearman over here on the left, PT 13, 17, 18, 26 if you put it, or 28, 27 with a canopy. 27 with a canopy. PT 19 here, and the PT 22 down here. Fairchild, Boeing, Stearman, and Ryan down here. Don't get it confused. This is not made by Ryan. This is Fairchild. This is made by Ryan. And just for you N3N fans out there, there was another primary trainer the Navy used, the N3N. It's the only World War II picture I actually found of it, but its color is kind of cool. There's Marines on it too, for you Marine guys back there. And for those of you who don't know, the N3N was made by the Naval Aircraft Factory, and it's it looks a lot like a Stearman, unless you know what you're looking for, but it does have dual ailerons. It was all metal construction too. It didn't use wood, which is kind of neat.
Wasn't it Zeppelin parts, or parts of Zeppelins or something like that?
Okay, that's a good story. Actually, the claim to fame for the N3N is it was the last biplane in U.S. military service. It was, they kept them flying at the Naval Academy up through about, I want to say 58, 60, somewhere in there. And every guy that went through the academy had to get his aviation orientation, and he did it in N3N on floats, float with outriggers. So, properly ordered, the PTs in front of the Stearmans here. That's me in my first PT here. And you'll see a variety of paint schemes on primary trainers. And if anyone says, oh no, they never painted them that way, don't believe them, because there's a lot of variation that went on. But there are a few that I'll point out that were never painted that way. For one, mine's too dark of a color. I asked the guy I bought it from, I said, why'd you paint it this dark color instead of the proper blue? And he said, I didn't like the other color blue. How do you argue with that? Stearmans are painted in the right color here. And for those of you that are curious, that's Rod Richardson and his PT-19, squadron member for a long time. Rest in peace. And then that's Jim Matthews and George Rehnquist. Yeah, and that's actually right here. That was right here, Emerald City Flight Fest 95, I think. I'd never flown formation before, by the way, so that's why I'm a little out of position.
Is that why Rod was afraid of you?
Actually, you can see I'm actually banked there. I'm braking, so it's okay. And there they are, kind of all together. You got a Stearman. You'll see a lot of Stearmans in civilian paint. That's a 450 Stearman. It's got the 985. Probably came off a BT-13. There's probably a PT-19 with a canopy. There weren't a lot of PT-26s, which is the canopy version of the Fairchild in U.S. service. There were a few. Mostly they were up in Canada, where they needed the canopy to stay warm. And also very rare to have a PT-26 actually painted in the early paint scheme of the war, the blue and yellow. They went over to the silver paint scheme about mid-42, and that's true of all the primary trainers. And actually most of the airplanes went over to the basic trainers, and that's when you started to see, instead of B-17s painted green, they came out bare aluminum. They're like, why are we painting these things? Costs money, takes time. And then the Ryan down there in the most common paint scheme you'll ever see them in. And the Ryans were all built early in the war, so that is true to form that they were in the early paint scheme with the red, white, blue rudder. It's not the best picture in the world, but I like it because you got the guy cranking the Stearmans. All the Stearmans came out, no electrical system. That's how you started them. And for those of you that see me starting George Rehnquist's airplane, I have a lot of experience doing that. And that's kind of a cool paint scheme, and you Stearman guys help me out here if I get this wrong, but often they paint the red stripe around the fuselage on that to identify them as solo.
Stay away.
Stay away. Don't get close to this guy. They had other paint schemes, I think, to identify instructors too.
Blue was the formation one, and green was the instrument instructing, which they had only like one per squadron.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. Glad you're here. Because I am not a Stearman expert. There's a modern picture.
Is that a Stearman or an N2S?
Stearman is an N2S.
Actually, we're a little different.
No, N3N is the different one. Stearmans are N2Ss in the Navy. And there they are in the Army Air Corps colors. And just so you know, PT-13s and 17s, 18s, all identical airframes, just different engines. The Lycoming, the Continental, and the Jacobs engines. And then there's the silver paint scheme. You don't see a lot of Stearmans in this paint scheme. I actually kind of like it. It's different. And like I said, mid 42 and on, all the primary trainers. This is the paint scheme they would have had.
How many of those did they ever build?
Stearmans, I think it's just over 10,000. And then the Fairchilds or the Ryans were about a little over 1,000, and then the Fairchilds were just under 8,000. So this is a Ryan PT-16. This is the earliest version of the military version of the Ryan. Monasco engine instead of the radial engine Kinchen. A couple other things you'll notice, it's a little hard to tell here, but the wing is not swept, it's a straight wing. I've got a better picture showing that. And it doesn't have the external rib. They moved a rib out onto the outside of the fuselage so they get a wider cockpit. All of the military trainers, they had a standard width cockpit. It was, you know, X wide, X long, so you could fit in with the parachutes. And they all use the same seats, by the way. So there's another view of it with the Monasco, and you can kind of see the straight wing there, and then no external rib. And then here, this is the rib I'm talking about here. This is a PT-20. It's got the Monasco engine, but it's the military version now with the longeron moved onto the outside. There's another view of it. You can see it there. And then there's a view I wanted to try to capture. See the swept wing on the PT-22, and then the straight wing on the 20. I've flown a PT-22, not had the fortune to fly an STA or a straight wing Ryan. Anyone here fly one? Ever fly an STA? The Ryan PT-22, anyone fly a PT-22? Anyone ever flown one? Good. Good. They are not my favorite airplane to fly. They sure are cute and classic looking, but I think when they swept the wing when they put the radial engine on there to move the center lift aft. The CG was moving aft. And it really screwed up the aerodynamics of the airplane, I think. Because when you fly it, it feels like you're on a beach ball. I mean, it's kind of doing this the whole time. And it's just kind of wallowing along. And then the other aspect of it is they have a real propensity for, if you get them slow and cross control, to snap on you. And there's a lot of guys that have been killed in Ryans, getting them cross controlled low and slow, to the ground. So, as Bud says, why would you want one of these? Because your friend's going to go get killed in it if you ever load it to him. So, there's another view. They are cute looking airplanes, gotta say. All of the PTs, depending on the engine, prop combination, and everything, they're all, a 90 to 110 mile an hour airplane, all pretty comparable. And then there's the Fairchild. That's the quintessential picture. You'll find it in every book out there, probably Jane's Aircraft and everything else. And that's a silver one with that kind of an in-between paint scheme. This is, I think I have another picture. It's got the red around the insignia, which was that was like mid 42 to late 42, I think. And then there's my PT after I fixed the paint scheme. So that's the proper coloring. There's a story behind that. Real quickly, 2 instructors in a 172, one giving the other one a BFR at the Evergreen fly-in 1998, I think it was. Couldn't see that vertical stabilizer because the red, white, and blue just wasn't bright enough, and they taxied into my airplane. And, so I was grounded there for a while. But kind of the good news side of that is you guys, you've been down to Hood River and you've seen the front of the old hangar, from Evergreen. My airplane got to spend a couple months in the old hangar at Evergreen, so it's kind of cool. And we got to rebuild it and repaint it and make it look the way it should. There it is. It now resides in the Fairchild Museum in Hagerstown, Maryland, where Fairchilds were built. Interestingly enough, Mine was not built there, it was built by Aeronca. The Fairchild, the PT-19s and 26s were built under license, of course built by Fairchild mostly, but also built under license by Aeronca, Howard Aircraft, St. Louis Car and Foundry, Fleet in Canada, and even in Argentina. So, and the other claim to fame of the PT series is more Army Air Forces pilots got their primary training in this than any other airplane, more than the Stearman, because Stearman's a lot of Navy guys trained in them too. And then with a PT in between, I ended up with a PT-26, and it's actually not even a 26, it's a 19 with a canopy, but never found a logbook entry for when the canopy got put on there, so I think it might have got put on during the war, who knows. And that's, that was at Vintage Aircraft Weekend, I think, over Payne Field there. In this picture I put in because my wife's in the back seat here, and she got to fly a lot in PT, was not a big fan of the open cockpit. When I got the canopy, that was the way she looked, because she didn't have to do this anymore. So any of you guys contemplating a Stearman or a Ryan or a Fairchild, and you're going to get the open cockpit, especially around here, you might want to ask somebody how fond they are of flying around in the wind and the cold. So, if you fly with your wife, that is. And this is a kind of an interesting picture. This is the both of them, maybe 26s. The Canadian version. The Canadians were the ones who demanded the canopy again because of the cold weather they were flying in. They started out with the open cockpits flying year-round in Canada, you can imagine. They did have rudimentary heat as well, the Canadian-built ones. There's another view one. And then this is actually another member's airplane. This is Carl Tarana's airplane up at Concrete, now in the museum up there. Who Carl also bought it from Jack LaBelle, who was a member of the squadron. So I put this one in here because this is that interesting paint scheme with the. It was very short-lived. It had the red outline around the insignia. There's another view of it. That's the PT-23. I didn't talk about that a little bit. That's got the Continental engine. Again, similar to the Stearman's, same airframe, just different engine on there. So if you're a round engine guy, it's another option for you. And then again, the Fairchild in front, Stearman in the back, where it belongs. and then this is I just put this in because it's a fun picture. This is what happens when you leave an oil cap off. And I can vouch for that because one day I flew all the way from, I think it was, I want to say Redding, California, all the way to Scappoose, 3 hours on the coast, had an awesome flight. Jump out of the airplane, go over to the gas guy, and I turn around and look, and that's what my airplane looked like. What a mess, what a mess. And then I showed this last time. For those of you who weren't here, this is, besides my good looks, this is the one thing I share in common with Harrison Ford. We both crash landed PTs. His a little bit more severe than mine. Mine resulted in no injuries for me or my wife, who was smiling in the back seat. This is up at San Juan Island. Not at the best place to have an engine failure, a few miles south of San Juan Island. I'll just leave that at that. And then we both had different forms of recovery. I kind of like mine. It's a neat feature of most of the PTs. You'll see they have rollover structure. The PT-22 does as well. When you take the canopy off and you hook up to it, it's pretty darn close to the CG. So it's a convenient way to pick up your airplane and move it off out of the bog up to a nice dry piece of land. All right, real quickly, because I don't want to take too much time here, we'll talk a little bit about basic trainers. In the U.S., there were two. Oh, just back up just a little bit. For those of you, and I know a lot of you guys are, but during World War II, there was 3 phases of training: primary training, basic training, and advanced training, right? Just like they sound. About 60 to 70 hours in each. PT, you learned how to fly, got all the basics of flying out of the way. Rudimentary cross-country flying, a little bit. The BTs, they had a little more complexity: electrical system, radios, flaps, controllable propeller, night flying, formation flying, that's where that happened. Then from here they decided, well, okay, now what are you gonna be? You're gonna be a fighter pilot, bomber, transport pilot, multi-engine, and then you went on to your advanced training in either one of those. This is the Vultee BT-13 down here, and that's the North American BT-14, Yale, if you're a Canadian. Not very common, but it's kind of, basically think of it as a 450 horsepower fixed gear AT-6. The BT-13 also 450 horsepower, 440 if it was powered with the right, and then it was the BT-15. And this airplane, anyone know what this is? No. That is a Vultee BC-51, and this is what should have been the advanced trainer in World War II. It was the competitor to the BC-1, which became the AT-6. They lost the competition, probably due to politics more than anything else, not the performance of the airplane, and they ended up converting it into the BT-13. And if you look at a BT-13, you ever get a chance to look when the wing is really, really deep. The spar is like this deep. Well, the reason it's that deep is to take the landing gear when it's retracted, even though the BT-13's got fixed gear. But this was 600 horsepower too. This is 1340. So retractable gear, 1340 BT-13, probably 1,000 pounds lighter than a T6. A lot faster, cleaner wing.
Are any of those still around?
No, unfortunately. I'd love to have one.
There's a BT-13 at Riverton now. Just came up. I invited him to the meeting this
Really?
year, but he didn't.
Really? Really? A BT-13 at Bremerton? Do you get the guy's name?
I don't have his name.
We'll find it. Anyway, they built quite a few BT-13s during the war. Like I said before, they built about 11, or I might have mentioned, I'm not sure, 11,000 BT-13s out of one plant in County, California, the Vultee plant there. At one point, they were putting out 22 a day. A day. So, it's pretty amazing. This is a lineup. I think this is this is kind of the paint scheme I modeled my BT after. This is a Goodfellow Field down in Texas, and quite a sight to see that many all in a row. Neat formation picture this is from the war. And there's that paint scheme that I based mine on. Early BTs had the fairings on the gear. They took them off because they were just a pain in the neck. Another picture of them. And there's my BT-13, doesn't it look great? That's the way I got it. Yeah, it came on a 48-foot drop deck, flat hood trailer. Right here, this picture's taken right over here where the hangars are no longer, row B, been torn out. It was a wreck and partial project.
It was a kit plane, not Curt?
There was, yeah, kind of a kit plane. Yeah, it was. And there it is when it was done. That was at Arlington, I think. Yeah, it's at Arlington. Yeah, there's Miner's airplane right there. So yeah, great flying airplane. To me, it felt just like flying the PT-19, just on steroids. Really easy airplane to fly. Don't tell too many people, but both the PT-19 and the BT-13, easiest tailwheel airplanes I've ever flown. Nice wide gear, low center of gravity, real effective rudder. Really easy airplane to fly. There's another picture. That was the day we flew over the Lincoln up in Everett, and the Lincoln came back. And there's another former member in the back seat. And then this is the Navy version, the SNV. Just didn't want you Navy guys to feel like you were left out. They used them as their basic trainer as well. Another picture of it. And then there's a nice view of what they look like in all aluminum. All aluminum except for later in the war, because of the conservation of strategic materials, they started making bits and pieces of this airplane out of wood and micarta. So the tail cone back here was all formed plywood. The side panels, almost all the access panels were actually micarta. And if you're not familiar with micarta, it was an early plastic. It was a resin fiber component. They made some of the control surfaces out of wood as well. And that's it. Any questions about PTs and BTs?
How long did it take you to put it together?
I don't know. I missed a lot of board meetings, I think, as I recall. Let's see. I got it in 2000 and finished it in 2003. It was about 2.5 years.
What was the damage to it when you got it?
Severe.
It was a flying airplane that got hit by a kit fox of all things at an air show. Guy was actually pulled up and parked the airplane, the engine was still ticking over. Some guy took off, 2 people in a kit fox, decided to do a high performance, climb out in a kit fox, kind of an oxymoron, and stall spin right in top of the BT-13. And the guy, I talked to the guy who was in it, and if he hadn't been wearing a helmet, he would have been dead, because the wing of the kit fox actually hit the back of his helmet.
What happened to people in that plane?
I think one was killed, and the other was severely injured and burned.
In 1946, my dad bought a PT-26, and he brought it home, and my mom was having labor pains like every 2 minutes.
Good timing.
On the way to Bremerton Memorial Hospital, he wanted to take her for a ride. And so he took her for a ride, and then she stepped out after the ride and stepped on the wing and her water broke, and I was born within an hour.
So you were almost born in a PT-26. Well, wow, how do you stop that one? Yeah, and they stayed married.
Did he log the time?
Yeah.
Was that a labor?
Close enough.
Just so you guys know, so this is 195. Yeah, so I'm no longer a Warbird owner. I sold my PT-26. Unfortunately, I'm not rich like some of these guys who can have multiple airplanes. And
It's
so,
still in your blood.
yeah, and so that's what I'm flying now. Which if I wanted to fib, I could say it's an LC-126 and still call it a Warbird. Anyway, yeah, my PT-26, kind of, your story reminded me, was surplus here in 1946. Maybe it's the same airplane, who knows? And was in this area up until I sold it. Now it's back in Ohio. Kind of disappointed about that because it was in this state in Western Washington, a little bit in Eastern Washington, its whole civilian career, which is kind of cool. And in fact, Rick Davis, who I bought this from, that was his first airplane, and he sold it in my PT-26 in the 70s. So it's been around. For a lot of guys in this area who know that airplane and flew it. So anyway, questions?
Yeah, Curt, are you still gonna pay your $20 a year?
Do I owe? No, I think I'm good through January. Huh? Yes, I'll pay my $20. Ken?
I said, after the war, my dad bought a BT-13 out of Calero, which was Chino.
Yeah.
And he paid $300 for it. It was brand new. It only had 100 hours on the airplane, and they didn't have parachutes in the seats.
Oh, wow.
And he could have bought a B-38 for $1,000, a 51 for $500.
Yeah, I ran into, when I rebuilt the BT-13 here, my next door neighbor was Clay Lacey at a CV in the hangar next door, and he said that in about 1947, he and a buddy, there was a guy that had a BT-13, and he said, you guys can go fly it anytime you want, just put gas in it. And that was pretty common back then. Correct.
I owned a P-51, I paid $3,500 for it, sold it for $6 and made a fat couple grand on
And you thought you did good, huh?
What did it work in?
Over $1 million. Hey,
So if a guy was looking to get into a good entry-level PT type Warbird, what advice would you give him as far as what way to go?
well, I would say not a Stearman. But actually, for your money, you're going to get more airplane for your money out of a Fairchild than you are out of a Stearman. And you can get a Ryan for, I think I just saw one born at Barnstormers for $60,000 if you want to go that way. People love the way they look, and some people like the way they fly too. They're neat little airplanes, a little funkier, no electrical system usually, got the Kinchen engine. But yeah, I mean, you can get into a good PT for anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000. So.
Yeah, to verify that on the Stearman, any open cockpit up in this area is not a great place to have.
Yeah, it's a great second airplane. Great second airplane, right?
5 months out of the year, I get flight, the rest is just too cold.
Yeah, my old PT, I was lucky to get, in the wintertime,
Yeah,
3 or 4 flights.
there's
Yeah.
a beautiful.
What about aerobatics?
Well, an aerobatics,
Stearman is great for aerobatics.
yeah, Stearman, if you want to go out and do aerobatics, Stearman's a much better airplane, although none of them are great aerobatic airplanes. You know, if you want to go do aerobatics, go get a Pitts, right? But they're all do basic aerobatics. Stearman's better aerobatic airplane than the PT. The PT is, the only success I had with aerobatics with it, and I'm no aerobatic pilot, was sitting in the back seat, get the CG further out, because sitting in the front seat solo, you're so nose heavy. You have to get way up here to do a decent roll, and you still come out down here. And the BT-13 is not a great aerobatic airplane. As Bud says, you start a roll, the next day you might finish. But it'll do them all. It'll do all the aerobatics. Anyway,
Great,
that's it.
thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.